This is TWiT.
Microsoft announced a range of products, services, and initiatives at its Build conference in San Francisco yesterday. Here to catch us up on what Microsoft announced is the Wall Street Journal's Nathan Oliveris-Giles. Welcome to you, Nathan.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great, thanks. Now, you pointed out that Microsoft can't stop calling everything it makes a platform. Is that because they're at a developer conference, or is that how Microsoft sees itself now as a platform company?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, that's definitely the buzzword. Everybody's saying platform, whether it means anything or not. But with Microsoft, it actually does reflect who they think they are. They're really trying hard to connect all of the different pieces they have. They have Azure to build and deploy apps on. They have Windows running across all these different devices, phones, tablets, computers, augmented reality headsets, the Xbox. And then, they have their software, they have Office, and they're really trying to even turn Office into a platform so it can plug into different apps and stuff like that. So they really want to sell developers on the idea that, hey, we have all of our, act together, we're moving forward, we're doing cutting edge stuff, and now's the time to buy in and build what you're making on our platforms, right? So, and they even took some steps to actually make it so that if you're building apps for Android or iOS, they want you to build in Microsoft environments and then port stuff over. Or if you're building for those other environments, you can actually bring things over to the Windows operating system. So they made a lot of changes, but platform, it's a silly buzzword, but Microsoft genuinely means that, yeah, we're trying to get everything together on the same page here.
Nathan, let me ask kind of a philosophical question here. Do you think that this is what we're seeing now is a really good indication of of Satya Nadella's Microsoft? Do you think this is what he wants for the company going forward, this sort of unified vision of one Windows and everything? Or do you think a lot of this is still kind of Ballmer era stuff that's just now bubbling up to public release and completion?
Well, I think the ideas really started before he got there. If you look at what Ballmer did before Satya Nadella took over as CEO, they started combining divisions. They started kind of mainstreaming a lot of stuff, bringing Xbox kind of into the fold more so. But I think, Satya was on board with that idea from the get-go. And I think one of the reasons why they chose him is because they thought he would be the right guy to kind of push this idea forward. So I think very much the way that they're combining things is a reflection of Satya Nadella, is a reflection of kind of his ethos of being inclusive, of, not just trying to bring people to Microsoft, but saying, hey, you know what? Android and iOS have the apps. We need to go where they're at. So we need to make it really easy for people who are already, working over there to bring their stuff to Windows. They yesterday released a new Visual Studio app for Mac computers. In the past,
exciting.
It is actually exciting if you're a developer. If you were before developing, you would have to use a virtual machine, and that's kind of just a pain in the butt. Now, there's an entire generation of developers who grew up loving Macs and kind of hating Internet Explorer and not really thinking Microsoft was that cool. Now they're saying, hey, listen, we have a great cloud services ecosystem. We can come to you. We're making the products wherever you're at. So they're not just kind of building for themselves. So yeah, Satya's taken this idea forward. I think this is really a reflection of what he thinks is best for the company. But, some of these ideas did start with Ballmer for sure.
Joe Belfiore plugged a monitor and keyboard into a phone and used it just like it was a regular PC. What do we learn about this? Are we all going to be able to do this with our Windows 10 phones?
You know what? That was actually a really exciting moment. So Microsoft is calling this Continuum, and will basically in the future, they didn't say when, but sometime in part of Windows 10, and what they kind of said was Windows 10 will be around for about 2 to 3 years. We'll be able to buy specific Windows 10 phones, plug them into a monitor, and run them as a PC. He used a keyboard and mouse and actually, checked some email, messed around in PowerPoint. That's a pretty exciting idea. It's kind of been almost like a holy grail idea of, okay, I don't need a bunch of computers. How about one little device I can just plug into different screens to get the different experience that I want? I really, really like the idea. I think it's a great step forward. It feels kind of cutting edge. My question really is, with so much of our stuff happening in the cloud, almost why do we need a computer? Why do we need, one device to carry around? Maybe someday, hopefully, this stuff will be small enough and portable enough that it's just essentially kind of all in the cloud, and the heavy computing is happening up there rather than on a device, right? So it's a really great idea. We'll see what the timing looks like, but there's a ton of potential there for sure.
You mentioned their cloud stuff too. They made a number of cloud-related announcements too. It almost sounded like they're taking on EC2 and the database stuff that Amazon is doing. Is that, you think, significant and interesting, or do you think it's just Microsoft trying to add additional value to their, I know we're not supposed to say platform, but to their platform?
Yeah, I think it is significant and interesting. The reason being is that if you look at the core of Microsoft's customers, they still have a lot of those business customers. They're still in the enterprise in a huge way. Now, PC sales have been declining and Mac sales have been rising, but really in the enterprise and businesses in most of the world, people are using PCs. So a lot of folks going to Amazon Web Services, a lot of folks going to Google or Salesforce for database stuff, and um, basically Microsoft has a competent offering against that in Azure and even other development tools like SharePoint and different kind of cloud-based ideas. So I think it is significant. They need to retain those customers. They need to win back consumers, regular people like you and me, but they need to maintain those business customers too. So all of those cloud announcements are really kind of centered around that. Like, how do we bring in new people without losing what we have in the first place?
Microsoft announced the easy porting of Android and iOS apps to Windows 10. How are developers receiving this news? Is there any excitement behind this idea?
It really seems like there's a lot of excitement. It really does seem like there's a lot of excitement. They did some demos on stage of porting over some apps, and it looked fairly easy. I have a ton of questions about this because there have been a lot of different products over the years that have claimed to do this exact same thing, and it never quite works that well. It never quite works that easy. Recompiling apps, emulation, things like this don't always seem to work 100%. If Microsoft can actually figure this out, if they can crack this open, that could be pretty massive in and of itself. But the question still remains, why would a developer want to port their apps from Android and iOS over to Windows Phone if Windows Phone doesn't have a significant amount of users? Now, part of it is ideally, if it runs on Windows Phone, it should be able to run on Windows 10. But that still brings in the issues of building an app that is, essentially responsive and kind of scalable in that way. Because right now, smartphone apps just still don't look that good on computer screens, on laptop screens, on desktop screens, or even tablet screens for that matter. So, there's a lot of questions as to, are developers going to take the time to put the effort into a place that doesn't have a lot of users, that just doesn't have a lot of consumers using it? Windows Phone is just not popular. Android and iOS are really killing it. So, it's great that Microsoft is saying developers will do it. Will developers actually do it remains to be seen. But from a technological standpoint, it could be super exciting if they actually figure this out.
So Microsoft says 1 billion Windows devices running Windows 10 in 3 years. What does that mean? What does 1 billion devices mean in this context? Because I mean, it's not just talking about 1 billion desktops or 1 billion phones or whatever. This is like spread across a whole bunch of different things, including like Raspberry Pis and all kinds of little bitty niche things, right?
Yeah, I loved it. I absolutely loved it when Meyerson, Microsoft's Windows chief, basically said, we're going to have 1 billion devices running Windows 10 in 2 to 3 years, because it just felt so ambitious and almost like overly confident, and like it just didn't really quite make a ton of sense either. Basically, there are existing Windows 8 computers that should be able to run Windows 10. And then there's all the Windows phones and Windows tablets that are out there. And then there's the Xbox. And then there's, the HoloLens headset that will eventually come. And then there are all the new PCs and phones and tablets that they hope to sell, right? So hitting 1 billion devices, it sounds really great. And if you're sitting in that seat and you're a developer and they're trying to sell you, it's like, okay, yeah, I want to reach 1 billion people. That's more than Android. That's more than anyone else, right? That's exciting. But will they actually be able to do it? I honestly have no idea. If anything, at this point, I think very little confidence that they're going to pull it off. The reason being, Windows 8 only hit about 200 million licenses the last time they gave us sales numbers, which was February 2014. Windows 7 only hit about 240 million licenses. Now, if you add in Xboxes in there, if you add in phones and tablets, I don't know if that still gets you to 1 billion. So it's a pretty ambitious plan. But at a developer conference, you need to be ambitious. You need to be confident. You need to show everybody in the room that, hey, we got this. We're going to make it happen. Buy into our vision. Get on board. But it really just sounds like a pie in the sky idea. It made me laugh a little bit, to be honest.
Nathan, Microsoft blew everybody's minds again with the HoloLens demo, which included this time apps for the first time. What was that demo like? And also, you mentioned that you used the word eventually with HoloLens. I remember when Microsoft first rolled out HoloLens, they said that it would come within the time frame of Windows 10. And a consensus quickly formed around that phrase to mean that it would ship when Windows 10 ships. But I interpreted that as meaning that sometime between when Windows 10 ships and Windows 11 ships, it's going to land sometime in there. But it's looking like that latter interpretation is correct, isn't it? So if you can comment on just what the experience of that demo was like, and also what you think about the timing of HoloLens.
Yeah, well, let's start with what the experience is like. It looks really, really, really cool. It looks like the coolest version of augmented reality that I've seen thus far, right? It's not quite virtual reality. It's not taking over your entire field of vision, but it is placing, computer-generated images in front of you, and they follow you around. They're to scale. They're really, really slick, and they look very, very high fidelity. Now, they showed off a really neat demo of an application where like medical students and their professors could actually look at like a life-size human body. They could kind of dissect it. They could pull out the heart and look at it in real size, and then even blow it up to see minute details that you might otherwise miss. They could walk around a globe. There was like a digital puppy. And there was a neat little actual physical robot. It looked like it was an erector set that had like an augmented reality projection above it. It's really, really, really cool. There are some kind of issues that I have as far as like looking at it on kind of along the edges. There looks almost to be like a little line of bleeding light. That is something that you kind of see in virtual reality headsets, and it's almost as though the display can't necessarily quite process, what's in front of you versus the light panels behind it and things like this. But it's really, really neat, and especially for a Generation 1 product, it looks fantastic. So the hype is there. I can't wait to try it out for myself. I haven't gotten to try it out for myself yet. But the potential for using this for educational purposes or even entertainment purposes really seems awesome. The headset does look a little heavy. I don't know how long people would actually want to wear it, but the fellow on stage who was wearing it, well, all the people, they were just walking around like normal as though they could see through it. So I don't think you'll see people walking down the sidewalk wearing these things, but it sounds like if you wanted to, you could, which is kind of a crazy idea. One of the really neat things is that it doesn't need to be connected to a phone or computer. It can run on its own, which I think is really, really cool and makes sense since a lot of people don't have Windows phones and they want to reach everybody, right? Not just people who have existing Windows products. So that's pretty cool. That could be kind of a toehold into some new consumers. As far as when it's going to come, Microsoft is basically saying that Windows 10 is going to arrive sometime this summer. And that's pretty vague. We don't exactly know when. And then as far as the time frame thing, what people at Microsoft have told me is that HoloLens, a consumer version of HoloLens, is going to come before the end of the year. That seems super, super ambitious. We haven't been told how much it's going to cost. Now that's already been out there reported. I didn't just break any news or anything like that, although I wish I did. But that is the kind of promise and potential. That's pretty early. And if it's delayed, I wouldn't be surprised because cutting edge stuff like this gets delayed sometimes. The Apple Watch was delayed. Google Glass has been delayed into perpetuity almost. And HoloLens is really, really cool, and it's super cutting edge. And it's a kind of a reminder that there are some really neat ideas happening at Microsoft, and they're not just all about Windows and Office, right? But, how much will it cost? We have no idea. When's it actually going to ship? That's really just kind of a vague thing right now, too. They're still trying to figure that out.
I got to tell you, some of these medical applications would freak me out. I don't want like skeletons walking around and like giant hearts like beating in the middle of the room. Kind of gruesome, but still very, very cool. Nathan Oliveros-Giles is at WSJ.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at NateOG. Thanks for joining us today, Nathan.
My pleasure.
All right.